non-tendered relief pitchers. So we spent a lot of time yesterday at MLB Now, myself and Joel, talking about the non-tendered players like Schwarber and others of that ilk. Well, how about the pitchers? There's a real glut now when it comes to right-handed and left-handed pitchers, and there's just an assemblage of some of those names. Alex Claudio, Archie Bradley, Chasen Shreve. Remember Ryan Stanek was great with Tampa, wasn't as good the last couple of years. Matt Whistler, Dan O'Dowd's a big fan of. So with that as the template of some of those names, Mr. Plesac, which is a guy, or maybe a couple of guys, you say, you know what, I'd be curious to take a flyer on him?
One lefty, one righty. Alex Claudio. I know he throws from that lower three-quarter arm slot, and he's looked at as more of a lefty-type specialist, but he can get both lefties and righties out. He sinks the ball down and into left. He's kind of an unconventional type of pitcher in a day and age where we're looking for velocity. He doesn't have much of that, but he has a lot of depth, and he has a lot of deception. So you get guys out with stuff, or you get them out with deception, and he's more that. Archie Bradley. You know, we've seen a lot of, in 2020, we've seen some guys' careers fall down. We've seen some guys really spike. Archie Bradley, before the season started, going back into February, was a very valuable part of what we thought was going to be a really dynamic Diamondbacks bullpen. Gets traded to the Reds. You almost forgot that he was with the Reds. He really was an important factor in that bullpen. And I think his stock has kind of fallen a little bit. But I think Archie Bradley, the only concern, which may be what the industry is looking at, is there's a lot of high leverage that's been the last 3 or 4 years, a lot of games, a lot of pitches, but I think these two guys could help some bullpens.
Bradley, 2.95 ERA since 2017. Obviously, 2020 was not a great year. You thought maybe he might be the closer with the Reds because Iglesias might get moved, but those are two good names there. Joel, for you?
So I'm going to go off the beaten path here a little and go with Jose Urena. And I'm going to do that because of something we talked about a bit on this show this week, which is if we're fortunate enough to play 162 games next year, and I hope we do, you're going to have to cover 1,450 innings in a year where we come off a 60-game season where your workhorse pitched 70, 75, 80 innings. Your minor league guys hardly pitched at all or zero. And it's going to be tough to cover that. And I think finding hybrid guys who can be your 6th, 7th starter, long reliever, fill in when necessary, and give you 100-ish, 110 innings is going to be valuable. And this is where eyeball bias comes in. I've seen Urena in 17 and 18 pitch really well. To me, it looked like he was going to be Scott Erickson for a while. He has
Black Sox.
He has a mid-90s hard sinker. The ball is being beaten into the ground constantly. He's confusing to me like Nate Eovaldi. Like, he throws very hard and he doesn't strike people out. Yeah. But I'm thinking that will come with age. Instead, what came the last 2 years is a real regression. Now, I could understand the regression this year, right? There was COVID for him around his team. He lost his starting spot. But if I'm a team out there, perhaps even a second division team, or more importantly, a team that feels like they're on the border, am I a playoff contender or not? And I'm looking to take a gamble, what the upside could be, where maybe this guy could be your number 4 starter, and at worst, in a year where it might be tough to get to 1,450 innings, he could give me 100 of them. I would take a gamble with him because he's still in his 20s. He's still, even last year when he was having problems, it's 95, 96. I feel like if his stuff can be refined, that there's still a guy in there to take a risk on.
What's the opening day start in 2019? So to your point, there's talent there. People have believed in him. It's just a matter of getting back to that point. Let's take a look at the full list. This was just non-tendered guys in terms of relievers. But if you look at the full list of relief pitchers, so you're throwing Bradley into the mix now. All of a sudden, Dan, you can say, listen, Brad Hand, are you kidding? That guy led the league in saves. Liam Hendricks, he might be the best closer in baseball right now. I got Osuna as well, Melanson, Kirby Yates of the Padres. A year ago was awesome. But those are some good names in that list.
It is. One guy really strikes me, Blake Trinan. I thought he remade himself last year with the Dodgers. This guy hasn't forgotten how to pitch. And the Dodgers, you know, this is what they do. They've already pulled the trigger once. They just acquired Corey Knebel from the Brewers, right? This is another guy. The Dodgers seem to be able to find guys. And I think that Knebel is going to pitch well for the Dodgers. Trinan, to me, is a guy that could go in, and he's a high-leverage guy that you could use in the 8th or 9th inning. He'll pitch well for somebody.
Dodgers done it a couple times. We mentioned this yesterday, but remember Brandon Morrow, they did this with. They did it with Trinan. Now they're trying to do it with Knebel. It's a smart move, low risk, high value in trying to make a move for a guy like Knebel.
Yeah, when you're a fully functioning team and done a great job with your payroll, you get a chance to do this. I mean, Blake Trinan was non-tendered the year before. They gave him essentially a tender number at $10 million. And to Dan's point, pitched well this year for them. Yeah. And Knebel's half the price at $5 million-ish. A guy with swing and miss stuff when he's right, and his fastball did come back as the season went along. last year. He has closing history in case Jansen backs up again, and he does pitch well for you. I would keep an eye on that market to this extent. On non-tender day, there were 59 guys non-tendered. 23 of them were right-handed relievers. So what already was a gigantic class of righty relievers in normal free agency just had 23 more, including Archie Bradley, who's pretty good, join it. So is everybody sitting around and saying, you know, I kind of like this guy and this guy, but let's see who signs him, what the real marketplace is. I think it's going to be hard for that group. There were talented guys in that group.
Yeah.
But because of supply and demand, I remember that in college a little bit from Econ 101, the supply is high. And when supply is high, cost usually drops. So I'm curious how those guys grind to the contracts they want.
Your GPA in college, 3.5 plus or minus? No, come on. I'm a good student. There's no question.
No, I'm actually a bad student.
Brad Hand.
Well, that's why I'm sitting here instead of doing something valuable in my life. Right?
Exactly. Brad Hand, do you think that's just economics for Cleveland?
I think what's scaring people is a little bit of the drop tick in velocity. No longer the 94 to 96. He was 91 to 92, and that fastball curveball combo starting to get a little bit closer, and sometimes that smells a little bit of danger.
Yeah. By the way, when's the last time you had a guy named Archie? When I hear Archie, I just think of the comics.
Oh,
Jughead, are you kidding? I love Archie Bradley.
You went Jughead instead of Veronica?
You're right. Veronica was the better one.